Jason Brashears and Archaix. I went to a pretty cool event over the weekend on Adams Avenue in San Diego. It was put together by Jason Brashears at Archaix. If you're not familiar with Jason Brashears and Archaix, definitely go check out his work. I'm sure if you've heard of me, you've probably heard of him. He's very popular on YouTube and has been for many, many years, and has some very fascinating information, and it was awesome to see him put together this event alongside many other awesome speakers, one being Max Igan, who I've also been listening to for many, many years, who is an OG in the truther space. The event took place at a theater across the street from my favorite bookstore, probably in the entire world, if not definitely San Diego, and that is The Book Tree, which is owned by Paul Tice, who was a friend, a great friend of the late Jordan Maxwell, and actually helped get Jordan Maxwell published, and also helped get Jason Brashears published, and hooked him up with a lot of knowledge while he was in prison, I believe. But yeah, Paul Tice is an amazing guy, and the Book Tree is an amazing place. But yeah, this event was cool. It was full of a lot of lovely people from all around the world, and I had the chance to sit through the entire thing and watch all of the presentators, and I got to interview a couple of the presentators and a lot of, or not a lot, but some of the attendees who I just happened to resonate with, and so you'll also get to see some snippets of some of the presentations. And yeah, it's just it was a fun day. It was cool. I was trying to enjoy it myself, so I didn't film a lot, but I did get some very cool and interesting information and expressions from the people that I interviewed. I pretty much asked everybody the same few questions, but it's cool because even though you ask people the same question, they give you a completely different answer. So yeah, check out my day at the Archaix Expo in San Diego, and check out what these lovely and beautiful people had to say.
All right, so Cecilia, right?
Yes, it is. Hi.
Cecilia, hi. So when did you have your first spiritual awakening, and what caused that?
When I was born, I saw myself being born. I remember my mother's first words, and I remember the room. And that's been my food in life, are my spiritual experiences, because in this world, it's been a tough one for me, a lot of shadow work. So I'm a true believer in the spirit embodiment of the soul here on planet Earth, working through it all.
Do you believe that we're going through a global spiritual awakening right now?
Global. It's more than that even. It's as micro and nano as the human being cell, to the relations, the collective, the continents, the world, the solar system, and stepping even beyond that. Hence me giving some space. Yes, I do believe that we're in the transmission of time and space to move beyond and become whole again.
Wow. Do you believe that the powers that be are attempting to suppress this awakening?
The powers that be that attempt to suppress this are just an integral piece of the puzzle and are not the powers that be.
Awesome. Any last words for the people?
Peace, harmony, and here's the last kicker. Kick ass. Do it.
A lot of us in this room are coming out of hypnosis. We're learning how to feel and use our intuition to know whether we're being lied to or whether, it resonates truth. And that's a very powerful thing to be connecting to all of you in this way. It creates a really unique fusion of intent. And that's what shamans focus on, is developing something called unbending intent. And we're all capable of it. Everyone has the ability to get clear on their priorities in their life and come out of the distraction fraction of the theater of this world. Information can help you unlearn, but eventually even information becomes too heavy. So you gotta let it all go and just experience joy and sadness and embrace the intensity of being alive. If we get caught up trying to be something for others or try to maintain a certain body of knowledge, and for me that's letting go of the cosmological material. It's been a tool, but eventually that tool becomes a crutch. So we all go through these stages in our life where things are shifting, and so we have to learn to adapt and seek change, because change is coming. That's something we can count on. And so the Toltecs refer to that as being a fluid warrior, always ready, not attached to outcome, not caught up in story or drama. Our family members often want to keep us in drama. Our social circles are often based on, comparisons and jealousies and power dynamics that are no longer serving us. And so we're having to get really strong with our boundaries. We're starting to have to get clear about who we talk to, where our attention goes. What is it that we're really doing here?
Tell us about this hat you're wearing. What's the story behind this?
Basically, it's about conspiracy theorists and stuff. And it's kind of a gag against that.
Okay, it's a tinfoil hat, right?
Yeah.
That's nice, man. Stop the reptilians from mind controlling you.
Well, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
kind of a gag against that.
when did you have your first spiritual experience, and what led to that?
Wow. Goes way back. I was sitting on a couch and it was late at night, and I noticed I was looking down at myself, and then I kind of got scared and it popped back in.
Astral projection.
Weird, I know.
Has that ever happened again?
No.
Huh. Do you believe that we're going through a global spiritual awakening right now?
Yes.
What are some of the effects of it, or evidences of it?
Look at COVID. That's all I have to say.
Do you believe that the powers that be are attempting to suppress this awakening?
Yes.
In what way?
Saying that it's good for you, everyone needs to get it, it's untested.
Righteous. Any last words to the people?
Break free or die trying.
Love it, man.
So remember what they said a couple of years ago? Just 2 weeks to flatten the curve, folks. Just need you to stay home, relax for 2 weeks, and the world will go back to normal. Have a look at the fucking place, eh? Have a look at the place. Look what has happened over the last 4 years now. It's been almost 4 years since they said 2 weeks to flatten the curve. But what I want to talk to you about is what is going on in the Middle East with Gaza and Israel. The war against Hamas. There is no war against Hamas. There is no war against Gaza because it takes two armies to have a war. It takes two militaries to have a war. It actually takes two countries to have a war. Israel and Palestine is the one country. This whole thing that's going on at the moment, I mean, it was quite predictable they're going to do something like this. Ukraine was running out of steam. Ukraine has just basically been a big money laundering operation. That's all it's been about. It's been depopulating the young people of Ukraine so they can be replaced which is happening right around the world. They're even drafting pregnant women now in Ukraine. New body armour for pregnant women. Isn't that thoughtful of the government? Body armour for pregnant women. So they're clearing the population out of Ukraine, and I would suggest that a lot of people from Israel are going to be moving up to Ukraine. But what's happening in Israel and Gaza right now, a lot of people might not know, there's been a lot of pushback against the jab and all of this sort of stuff happening in Israel. They're pretty much on the verge of civil war. Bibi's a very, very unpopular Prime Minister, and they're pretty much on the verge of civil war, and suddenly this big incursion happens. Hamas invades Israel. On the most secure border in the world, no way can a cockroach get through that border without the Mossad and IDF knowing.
I don't know, that's a pretty hard question to just answer right off the cuff like this.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, I guess the first major one was in 2007, and it was through meditation. I had this, like a quantum experience, if you will. And it was very, very difficult to explain, but I kind of felt like connected to everything, like a whole quantum realm of multiple realities. And it was interesting, yeah. And that's kind of what led me on to start doing the radio shows and doing all the stuff that I'm doing now.
It's amazing. Do you believe that we're going through a global spiritual awakening right now?
Yeah, an awakening, or more even of a cleansing. I think we're going through a test. Whether it's an awakening or whether it's going to go the other direction is still yet to be determined.
Do you believe the powers that be are attempting to suppress this awakening?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, of course they are.
In what ways do you think they are?
Through mind control, controlling every aspect of our lives, but mainly mind control. You know, so we don't ever discover what we are, really what we can do, what we're capable of. Keep us in fear, keep us subservient to them, keep us believing we need them to protect us from all this shit that they do to us.
Absolutely. Any last words for the people?
Believe in yourself.
Always, my whole life. One of those people who always knew that what they were telling me was not the truth, that life was not what it was being presented as. So I think in a way I've kind of always been awake, but spiritual experiment, I don't know, how do you describe spiritual?
Great question. I guess just when you realize that there was more to this life than the physical.
Oh, at a very young age, one of the books that affected me the most when I was 18, I read The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley, which is the story of King Arthur and Glastonbury and Avalon. And that woke me up to this kind of, I don't know how I want to use spiritual, but there's this other side, this other piece to life. And it resonated as so true to me that I almost went out and got a little moon tattooed on my forehead. I got talked out of the tree by a friend of mine, thank God. But yeah, that was probably one of my first things. And then I'm a huge sci-fi fantasy reader. I have been my whole life. And that was when you can resonate more with the fantasy world than you do this ridiculous place. That's kind of that awakening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you believe that we're going through a global awakening right now?
You're not going to like my answer on that one. No. I think that, well, define global, but as in every person on the planet, no. Because I think the vast majority of the people on the planet aren't real. They're not connected souls. I think that the amount of humans, actual humans on this planet, are far less than a lot of people think. And I think when we speak to people and you explain things and you go through and you try and help them break through programming, and they get that glazed over look, and they're in a lot of ways they're not real. It's a tough one because we use words. English language really sucks. I believe that English was designed deliberately to stop these conversations because we don't have words to express certain woo-woo, if you will, ideals. We can't express that. So we use words like soul and spirit and things like that, higher consciousness, and it can be loosely interpreted by a lot of people. Like everyone interprets it their own way. So I'm going to say a lot of people don't have a true soul. They're not connected to that higher place, whatever you want to call that. So I think that the people who are real are waking up, and I think the people who aren't real are not going to, because they're under the programming. I hate to use the word, it sounds really callous. NPCs. When you play a video game, you have NPCs, they're part of the programming, and they're just there, and they don't move outside of their programming. And I think most people, if they're really honest, can say, yeah, I know those people. And there's the people that you meet, and you're just like, wow. You can't have a conversation with them because they literally cannot go outside that programming.
Okay. Do you believe that the powers that be, or whoever they are attempting to suppress the awakening?
Oh yeah, not even a question. I don't know if you were inside listening to my presentation. Like I said, they've infiltrated the alt media. So I mean, the alt media is just as suspect now as the mainstream media, and that is because they're doing everything they can to suppress and divide, to keep people arguing, keep people off balance, keep people in fear. Because if you're in fear, you live in a very lower level of consciousness. And I know, again, that's a really bad terminology. When you're in fear and when you're in anger, you're not thinking about the greater questions of life. You're worrying about how you're going to put food on the table. You're worrying about, is my neighbor going to do something terrible to me? You're worrying about, is the world going to break out into World War III? And it prevents you from kind of expanding in the more important things. And they're pushing that. They will push that as far as they can.
Absolutely. You had a particularly amazing presentation.
Thank you.
When it came to herbs and practical ways to elevate yourself.
Yeah.
Could you give the people just some quick recommendations on what kind of herbs or plants that can be taken on a daily basis?
You know what? And I just had this conversation with someone else. As I said towards the end of my presentation about going with your intuition. If you have a plant and you love that plant, and it draws you, even if you're out walking and you see, whether it's a dandelion or you love oregano really, really a huge amount, or you love chamomile. If you really love something, follow it and be like, that's what for me, calendula is one of my most favorite flowers. I use it in so many different types of medicine, healing from topical to internal, etc. For me, it's my be-all, end-all. So when I'm feeling under the weather, no matter what it is, I take my calendula because that's my flower. And when you can find the plants, the things that feel good to you, and the opposite is true too. If you hate something, if someone's saying to you, oh, you have to eat nettles because they're so good for you, and you detest them, like I do, then they're not going to do anything for you. Right? So, one of my things I learn, if you want to learn about herbs, pick one herb a week. It's very overwhelming. A lot of people get, there's so much to learn. Backtrack, pick one thing. Pick one thing that grows in your garden. One thing that you use in your spice rack. It could be oregano, it could be thyme, it could be basil. Learn it, research it. Learn it so that you have all this. And then when you think, hey, I've got this, I know this plant, then learn another one. And then slowly build your repertoire, if you will, of knowledge. It doesn't have to be all at once. And I'm sorry to say, there is no one answer, right? What works for one person is not necessarily going to work for another person. So I say to people, intuition is so important about what works for you. And like I said, if you really dislike something, no matter how healthy it's supposed to be, it's probably not going to work for you because you dislike it. And on an energetic level, you are blocking it off, or you are blocking it off for a purpose because maybe it's just not good for you.
Love it. Any last words for the people?
Research. Get old books. Find the old books and find the old knowledge. The most important thing we can do right now with all the unbelievable craziness in our world is be prepared. And that comes with like that learning old things. Pick up my challenge. I speak all over England to various groups, and I tell them, if you do one thing, whatever season it is, so this autumn, between now and Christmas, learn something new. Pick one thing, and it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. Learn how to sew. Learn how to bake bread. Learn how to change the oil in your car. Learn something. Bye-bye, crotch rocket. Learn something new that makes you a little more self-sufficient. Because the more self-sufficient we are, and of course, obviously gathering your community together of self-sufficient people, the better off you're going to be. Even in life, it doesn't matter. The World War III doesn't have, the world doesn't have to come crumbling down. When you learn that self-sufficiency and self-responsibility, you have a confidence, right? The more confident you are, the more you know, the less you fear. That's the answer.
I love it. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Our reality operates through letters, numbers, and symbols. You just don't see them. This, and what you hear, is the final product of the letters, numbers, and symbols. Does that make sense? Okay. We just don't see them. But you can say, we can use the word God because most everybody knows that word, right? That, whatever runs this reality, creates it through letters, numbers, and symbols. Because we can take any word, numerology, the science of numbers, we can break it down into numbers. We can take any form of a symbol and break it down into numbers. We can do mathematical equations and utilize numbers and formulas, etc., etc. But all this stuff that we're talking about, the letters, numbers, and symbols, they make up a movie. You're inside of a movie. This is a movie, folks. This is a real, your life is being observed. And my truth is, from my research, I've been doing this a long time, over 10 years, that your life's not your own. I know that a lot of you are going to fight against that. You're not going to want to accept that, because you're like, well, I chose to come here. How do you prove that? Because you made the decision, right? That's your proof. But I can take anybody in this audience, and I can break you down, and I can show you that your life has a predestination to it. Anybody here, I can break down. That's how confident I am. Because I have over 500 videos on my channel breaking down people, places, and things, showing that these people, places, and things had no choice. That your destiny is pre-written. I can support it. I will never use the word prove because I don't like to say that word. I can support it. I can support that everybody has a predestination to it. So the base fundamental of your reality is that it's your truth. Everybody has an individual code here. I'm not you and you're not me. I don't pay your bills, you don't pay mine. But yet here we are. Right? And we all have individualistic expressions. Jason was mentioning how he's, I forget exactly how he said it, but he says, I'm this way and I'm that way. Talking about his programming. You're all programmed a certain way. And you're being watched. This entire reality is entertainment. Now there have been many different cultures that have talked about mankind being watched, being observed. And the Greeks talked about mankind being used for food, which was called ambrosia, the nectar of the gods. Okay? So we basically are little batteries inside this construct. And you give off energy through your emotional reactions. When you get angry, you give off an emotional reaction. When you feel love, you give off an emotional reaction. Now you can definitely break it down to the constructs of angels and demons. Big topic, right? 72 angels and demons. 72 plus 72 is 144. Now you can branch off into the 144,000 in theology and the chosen ones. Are you a chosen one? If you're a fan of theology, are you going to be the chosen one? Well, here's the clue, ladies and gentlemen. Every single one of you are the chosen ones. Everybody here is.
We have 83 more years until a similar event in Genesis occurred, which was a reset event so catastrophic that mankind was literally put into the position of be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth because they had no other alternative. They've been wiped out. So A lot's going to happen before 83 years. A lot. The month of May 2040, it's not near as bad as you think. It's nowhere near as bad as you think. Disasters happen every single year. Maybe not tsunamis, maybe not earthquakes, but they happen. Regional populations are taken out, the rest of the world continues. This happens all the time. 2040 is a depopulation by 25%, meaning there's a 75% survival rate. 2046 is 1/3 of that, meaning from May 2040 to November 1st, the Day of the Dead, 2046, 50% of the world's population will no longer exist.
So what brought you out here? Why are you here today?
Oh, good question. I came here today because, one, I wanted to get to an in-person meetup to meet people that had common interests with me and worldviews, and kind of to ask questions and just be here in person with people. But I follow Jason Brashears from Archaix and Logan Jason from Decode Your Reality, and I'm a bit of a student of Logan's, so it's like meeting my teacher, and so it's just fun for me to break pattern and come on out west and spend time with my friends and family.
Awesome. What was your first spiritual experience and what led to that?
Well, that's a loaded question, sir. My first spiritual experience would be birth. When I was a child, I grew up in a household where I noticed there was negative energy and it didn't make any sense. My father, who was a wonderful person, he also was violent towards my mother. And it didn't make sense to me how somebody could love somebody and harm them at the same time. So I was very affected by that. So I was a very deep thinker, even at a very young age. So that's why I say I was never asleep. I was born awake because I would ask these deeper questions my whole life. And I'm from Massachusetts, and in 1992, I was a hairdresser, and I was hungover standing behind my chair, and I was cutting somebody's hair, and I had her head forward, and I was cutting it, and I drooled, and I like sucked it back up, and it shocked me, and I was like looking around to see if like anybody noticed, and nobody did, thank God. But I remember I'm cutting her hair, which I could do blindfolded, and I was like, oh my God, is this the rest of your life? Are you gonna eventually be out one night, which I went out a lot, and meet a guy, fall in love, get married, have children, get old and die? And with every fiber of my being, every cell was like, no! And so the next question that popped up into my mind was, well, if money was no object, what would you do? And my first thought was, bam, move to California. And I remember, I'm cutting her hair, remember, and I was like, oh my God, like you can do that. And so less than a month later, I was on a plane and I was in San Diego, actually. It's full circle right now from that question. And I lived in Del Mar and then Solana Beach. And then I moved to South Lake Tahoe, California. And I was 22. And so that's when I like met spiritual people, and it wasn't like I didn't skip a beat. But at the same time, I felt something was missing. I had started self-medicating with alcohol at age 15, and I knew, because I was a deep thinker and a deep questioner, and I was like, I don't want to smoke cigarettes and I don't want to drink when I move to California. But, I was 22, you're meeting new people and everybody's drinking or whatever. It was definitely less than in Massachusetts. But I was like, something's missing from my life. Like, what is missing? What is missing, And it was like, God is missing. And so I started knocking on church doors, and I just was like genuinely asking questions to the priests or the pastors or whatever it was. Nothing resonated. I studied with a Native American teacher. I did everything you can imagine. Got a hug from Amma, the hugging saint from India. Everything was like good. But one day, in a yoga class. This is before yoga was like popular, and I'd already been doing it like from a book on my own. I skipped a bunch, but these are the big ones. I was in Trikonasana during a meditation. It was a moving meditation. It's still the yoga that I teach to this day. It's ancient yogic, from ancient yogic scriptures, but I had an experience because we meditated and then moved the body and then continued with the meditation, and I was in Trikonasana, and the thought that came through my body was, this is how you save the world. See, it's an inside job. And then I studied with those teachers who were Buddhists, and so it kind of led me on this trajectory of yoga and Buddhism. And in those ancient scriptures, and Sanskrit is a very powerful language. And my teacher was a Sanskrit scholar, so he would translate ancient texts from Sanskrit into English directly. And it had a profound experience on my subtle body. And we all have one. And so we believe, or I believe, it's like assimilated that the world is coming from me and not at me. So the most important thing, and in the Tibetan language, I pardon my pronunciation, but is hlaksam namdak, which means personal responsibility. Total 100% personal responsibility. And that's really important to me because I believe that everything in my external world is a product of me. So even though you and I may be seeing the same thing, the way we internalize it, the way we perceive it is very different. So I, because of my upbringing and my childhood, really believe that I want to live a happy life. And how I do that, it doesn't mean I'm like jokey all the time. It just means that when I am having a moment, judging, angry, it doesn't mean it's bad or I'm bad or anything like that. It just means like, oh, let's look at that and see what it's here to teach me. What is it showing me? Am I enjoying the anger? I mean, nobody enjoys anger. I mean, it feels blissful in the moment, but then there's a ripple effect afterwards, and it was always like a massive cleanup, you know? And so I've had a lot of things. I had a spiritual partner die, and that was very traumatic. And you learn a lot, but I try not to blame people. And I like to enjoy the company. I'm an extrovert, even though I spend a lot of time alone. So that's why that's a loaded question. It's not like I was born this way, and I talk only nicely to myself because you are a child of God. You are creation itself. And you know, I think it's important, even if you don't believe it. Okay, that's fine. There's something inside of you that's supported that. But you're amazing. You are more powerful than you could ever even imagine. And magic is the norm. It can be. You just have to decide it is, and then receive it, and then also give it. Because if you're giving anger, anger is going to come towards you. So it's good to understand that kind of karmic energy. Karma is just action, you know, but that's me and that's my life.
I love it. Last question here. So it seems as if we're kind of going through a global awakening or shift. Would you agree? And if so, do you think that the powers that be are attempting to suppress that?
That's also a very good question. Okay. So being born awake, I'm 53, so that's 53 years of observing. So in my experience, I can only speak for myself, I do see an awakening. It's natural, it's a trajectory, everything is in constant motion, the only constant is change itself. So if you think things are stagnant, like your computer is always going to boot up, you are mistaken. It's not that way. So you get used to constant change, right? So yeah, of course, it's a trajectory. We're in a cycle. It has a birth, an aging, and a death, right? It's going through a cycle. So are more people waking up? Yeah, but it's always that way. People are waking up all the time. I always say to myself and to people and to students, it's not a matter of if people are going to wake up, it's when. Is it this lifetime? Maybe. Is it another lifetime? Perhaps. It's going to be another at some time you wake up to yourself. That's all for me. It's self-mastery. It's mastering the self, understanding the self, loving the self. because that's where it comes from. So yes, I do see everybody waking up. And do I think the powers that be are trying to keep us from that? I think there's always that element. It's part of the game. If there wasn't that part of the game, there would be no self-mastery observation. So it's part of the fun. As long as you understand, I think Logan said it great in his talk this 5 minutes ago when he said that it's a predator or prey, because you can't walk out of your house and not kill something. It's like it's happening inside the body right now. There's ecosystems going on. So it's kind of like it's feeding itself. So I have chosen to be somebody who loves, and instead of judging, the Buddha said, "Thou shalt not judge another, for if you do, you will surely fall or fail." But it means I don't want to fall. So you know what? You do you, boo. Just don't hurt anybody. And if you're hurting somebody, well, good luck.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Any last words for the people?
Any last words? In tropical astrology, I'm a Leo, so definitely I'll always have a last word. My last word would be understand language, because with every word you speak, you are manifesting. So an example of that would be within law versus the legal society. In the legal society, you complain, you make complaints. Who the fuck cares about a complaint? But in law of my authority, knowing my rights and expressing my rights, I would say I claim. So claim who you are in this realm. Stop letting other people decide for you who you are. This is your life. You decide, and you are the most powerful being in your world. There are no theys. There is only you.